before we start, I would just like to say that some of our content may be triggering for some of our listeners and viewers. If you need help, please see your GP or check out our show notes for a list of support services. While advice is given during these podcasts, this is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice. Neither the host nor the guests of this podcast may be held responsible for any action or claims in any way resulting from the information provided. Hi, and welcome to the Tough Mothers podcast and Tough Mothers TV. My guest today is Dr. Liz Harding. Liz is a GP, but she's not talking to us about anything medical today. She's talking to us about her journey into motherhood. Liz is an extraordinary woman. She's the mum of boy-girl twins who are 23 years old. And when we first got talking, Liz and I were in the same running group. We just met and we got talking about our motherhood journey and, our story. I was a little bit out of breath from running already anyway, but Liz took my breath away with her journey through postnatal psychosis. And she's going to speak to us a little bit today about that. And that's why I asked Liz to come on the program. But there is so much more in this story of Liz's about her conception. She's in a same-sex relationship, and her antenatal period before she had the children, the childbirth immediately after, and then the postnatal period, and her 2-year struggle with postnatal psychosis. So this is a really deep one, and I hope you enjoy it. Please remember, if it triggers you in any way, or if you feel that you may need some extra support, please speak to your GP and get some help. Hi, Liz. Thank you so much for being on the program.
That's a pleasure, Jen.
Thank you for your time and for sharing your story with us, because it's very unique, your journey into motherhood. And I would love it if you could tell us a little bit more about that. Maybe if you want to start with how you got pregnant.
Sure. It was a bit of a journey, but anyway, we finally got pregnant through a fertility clinic. I've got a woman partner, and it took a long time to get pregnant. It took about 9 cycles of artificial insemination.
Wow.
And it was pretty hard going. And by the time I got pregnant, I was pretty depressed, actually. So I was on antidepressants by the time I got pregnant.
Mm-hmm. And was it just the getting you down, just to keep trying and not getting pregnant? Is that what it was mainly?
I think so. I mean, I had a history of depression, so it wasn't that surprising that I was on antidepressants, but it wasn't my dream to be on antidepressants when I was pregnant. I had been really hoping not to be on antidepressants while I was pregnant, because I didn't want to take anything that could harm the children.
Yeah.
So I had tried really hard not to need antidepressants, but I'd found it a very stressful time going through the fertility clinic and getting pregnant. So I was quite disappointed, but I ended up on one of the SSRIs before I got pregnant. Mm-hmm. And we were lucky enough that I became pregnant with twins, which was really exciting.
So when you fell pregnant, were you elated? Were you thrilled?
Yeah.
You did.
Absolutely
you were. Yeah,
thrilled.
great.
Absolutely thrilled. Although it was really weird, because one of my aunts rang up and gave us her condolences for the fact that we had twins. And I was really quite offended and upset by that. But
was she serious?
Best ways. Yeah, she was so saddened that we had twins, because she said it would be such a hard job for us. And yeah,
wow.
so
okay.
And actually the fertility specialist, when found out that we had twins, said, "I'm sorry to tell you that you've got twins."
Really?
So
I'm so shocked by that.
Whereas we were so over the moon that we had twins, because we just thought that was fantastic. So
Yeah.
it was quite weird, that people were telling us what a terrible thing we were in for,
Can I can I ask you, wait, what did that do to your mental inner chatter? Like, what did you sort of, were you thinking, oh, is what is to come if people keep saying, I'm sorry, but what did
Yeah. At the time, we were just so elated that we were pregnant that
good?
we
Okay.
were just kind of like, what party poopers. Like, yeah, like we just thought, where's their head at? We're just so delighted that we're pregnant.
And especially since you had such a long journey to get pregnant, you think that people would have thrown you a party.
Yeah.
Wow,
Like,
I'm quite shocked by that. I'm sorry to
and
hear that too.
it was quite difficult because my parents were not really on board, I think because of the same sex thing.
Right.
And and they were kind of, I'd say, oh, does aunt and uncle such and such know that I'm pregnant? And mum would say, oh, you can break the news to them.
Oh,
So
oh,
um whereas when my brother and his wife got pregnant, she was out telling everybody in the world about it.
oh.
So it was kind of, um there were mixed feelings about it, but
Yeah,
we were
absolutely.
really happy. We were really happy that
That's
we were
great.
having kids.
This,
But it was a mixed time because mum and dad were, I think, a bit embarrassed and awkward about the fact that we were having children.
right.
They weren't comfortable with it.
Right. So
And
they were okay for you to be in a same-sex relationship, but it was just that you were bringing children into the relationship. Is that,
yeah,
am I understanding that right? Yeah. Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That's interesting.
But we just held on to the fact that once they met the babies, that they would automatically fall in love with them and they'd be all right. So we just held on to that belief that they would be fine once they actually saw the babies. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So how did you, so then you had this elation and excitement about being pregnant. How was your pregnancy?
Very hard actually.
Right.
Yeah. It was because I had always thought I'd be this wonderful earth mother who, you know, would breastfeed probably till they were 5 and, would be very natural with the babies and would blossom in my pregnancy. And in fact, I just felt as if I had a virus the whole time.
Oh, no.
I felt terrible. I was tired, so tired. And I kept trying to sort of jolly myself along because we tried so hard to have these children and I desperately wanted to have the children. But in fact, I couldn't feel that happy about it.
Hmm.
And my mood was quite low and I sort of had to kind of put on this fake enthusiasm. But in fact, basically, I just lay around like this beached whale feeling terrible.
Mm.
And I stopped work really early. I stopped work at 20 weeks because I just couldn't function anymore. My partner had to stop work to look after me during the
Wow.
pregnancy. And now I look back on it, I had quite severe antenatal depression.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really a thing that people knew about that much.
Yeah. Can you just remind me
And
how old your kids are?
they're 23 now.
Yeah. So that was in the 90s,
1996. Yeah.
1996. Yeah. So yeah, you're
And
right. So it's quite
it,
new. So
it wasn't
nobody
really
picked up
a
on it.
thing. Yeah, and I kept thinking, oh, this should be the happiest time in my life. I'm pregnant with twins that we really want. And I felt absolutely terrible. I
Mm,
felt sick, you know, and and I felt guilty for feeling so terrible.
mm.
And it should have been such a happy time.
And I think that, being pregnant is such a challenging thing for a lot of women, that there's this conception in society that we should be happy, whether you've conceived in, over 99 cycles like you have, or whether you fall pregnant straight away, that you should be happy and you should be glowing and you should be, and you should. And so it's very hard for us as women to almost admit that we don't.
Mm, mm. It
Yeah.
was it was really a weird kind of feeling. And so the pregnancy seemed to last for a long time. It wasn't that I didn't like being pregnant. I just felt absolutely exhausted. And I went to, I had a psychiatrist that I went to for my depression, and she wanted to increase my medication and add in, on top of the SSRI, amitriptyline. And I wasn't sure about adding more drugs because I was worried about harming the
Of
fetuses.
course, yeah.
So I went to my obstetrician, and the obstetrician said no, she didn't want me to take the extra medication. She said, can you just put up with it?
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to my GP, and my GP also said, can you just put up with the feeling? Don't take the extra medication.
Oh, God, that talk
So
about
I
being between a rock and a hard place.
So I didn't take the extra medication and kept feeling worse and worse and worse and worse. And then when I had the babies and the postnatal depression got really bad, I went back to the psychiatrist and asked for a note to be off work because I was really bad by that stage.
Yeah.
And the psychiatrist said, I'm not giving you a work note because you wouldn't take the medicine that I told you to. So
No.
it's your own fault for having postnatal depression.
What?
So
Oh
I
my
was
God,
stuck.
oh my God.
So we had no income because my partner had taken off work to look after the babies. I was unable to function completely. And we were desperate for money for months and months and months. Like, we were selling our possessions
Oh my goodness.
to feed ourselves, and it was really a desperate time. And of course, you know, I, in retrospect, we should have gone on the sickness benefit or got a benefit, but when you're in that state, you can't think very clearly. Or I should have gone to my GP and got a sick note or something.
Yeah.
But we ended up going to the city mission and
Oh.
getting clothes for the children, and getting, you know, you can get day old stale bread and you can get food from the city mission.
Oh, Liz. Wow.
So it was a really desperate time. And because I felt ashamed of having a mental problem, I never told my parents. So I never went to my parents for help.
Well, I don't blame you. If they, weren't really on board with you being pregnant in the first place, and you've had
No.
someone say to you, this is your fault because you didn't do what I said, I wouldn't be going either, because you'd just be waiting for them to say, well, I told you so, or something,
Yeah. You shouldn't have been having these children anyway, kind of
Exactly. That's your
thing.
curse now, because you shouldn't have had them in the first place. Oh my God, that's just, heartbreaking. My
So it
goodness.
was a pretty challenging time at the beginning.
So did you feel like when the babies were born, did you sort of feel a period in the beginning where you felt less depressed than you were? Like, did you have a little bit of a break between the antenatal depression and the postnatal depression, or did it just carry on and just get worse pretty much immediately?
It's hard to remember. I remember not bonding that much with the children. It was a bit of a worrying birth. I got toxemia, and they had a bit of a rush to do the cesarean section because I was my blood pressure went up really high, and I was seeing sort of sparkly lights and stuff like that, sort of almost on the verge of seizing
Wow.
before the delivery. And so they they delivered the babies, and they weren't breathing very well. So they had to go into the special care unit and have CPAP. And it was really interesting. A friend of mine was one of the midwives, and the babies got raced off to the special care unit. So I didn't see them as soon as they'd been delivered. And then a friend of mine brought me back a Polaroid photo of each of the babies, which of course was very kind of her. But when I was training at med school, the only time we ever did that for anyone was when the babies were going to die.
Oh,
So
oh my
I
God.
thought when she brought these back, that the babies were going to die, but I was too
Oh,
scared to ask. So
oh,
I thought, oh, they're both going to die. So I held the pictures of them and just cried and cried and cried, thinking they're both going to die, you know.
and you haven't even seen them yet.
Yeah.
Oh my
And
goodness.
um, and she thought, I'm just being emotional after a delivery.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Oh, wow.
so that was sort of my introduction to seeing them after birth.
Yeah. So
uh,
when did you get to see them then? Did you, was it several days or?
I think it was that day that they wheeled me down to see them.
And
But
did you
they were all
ask? Did you say,
covered in machines and
right.
stuff.
So
So it was
were you
hard
still
to touch
afraid?
them and stuff.
Sorry. Were you still afraid to ask them if they're okay or?
I asked my partner if they were going to die, and she said she didn't think so, but she
Okay.
wasn't sure because nobody had told her anything.
Wow.
So
And they're
it was
covered in
all,
machines.
yeah. And our son had been resuscitated with CPR. So she'd seen them doing CPR on him. So she was also quite concerned about what was going on. So
Yes.
it was all a kind of really difficult start for them. But
Yeah.
anyway, they came out and they were perfectly fine and everything
Good.
was good.
Good.
Um,
Yeah. And
uh,
then you brought them home and then struggles started with financially. And you'd mentioned to me previously that you felt that there was some onset of postnatal psychosis for you.
yes,
At what point was that how old were the children then?
well, that happened quite quickly because I got this really weird idea that my daughter wasn't actually my daughter, that they'd mixed her up with another baby on the ward, and that my daughter had got left at hospital, and we'd been given the wrong daughter to bring home.
Wow.
So
Did you say
um,
anything to anyone at that point
no,
about that?
I just kept looking at her very closely and thinking, she doesn't look like me, she's not the right baby. But I didn't want to say anything because it was just a kind of niggling worry with me.
Yeah.
and and I'd say occasionally to my partner, oh, I can see myself in my son, but I can't see myself in our daughter. Do you think she looks like me?
What did she
And
say?
just things like that. And
Uh,
she'd say, oh, yes, I think she looks like you. And I'd think, I don't think she does.
right.
And then as the days went on, the psychosis got worse, and I believe that she had been planted there by the CIA, and that she was an agent, and that she was recording everything I did for the CIA, and that I couldn't trust her. And it got a bit confused because my mission was to kill her, but I couldn't let anybody know. Like, it had to be an accident. I couldn't let anybody know that that was my mission, to kill her. And I couldn't let anybody know that I knew that the CIA was watching me, or else the CIA would kill my entire family. So I had to keep it all to myself.
Wow.
And it was a very kind of florid psychosis or delusion that lasted probably a couple of years.
Wow. And you
Was
didn't say anything to anyone the whole
Well, I
time?
couldn't, because if I told anybody, then the whole family would get killed.
Yeah.
So it was very difficult, and but at the same time, I had enough wherewithal with me to realize that it's wrong to kill a baby,
Right.
so
Yeah, yeah.
my mind was very confused. Like, I would be at one time plotting how I could kill this little girl and make it look like an accident, but at the same time I was loving her and caring for her and looking out for the best for her. And
We,
also at about 6 months, I had bonded with her and loved her and recognized her as my daughter. So there were all kind of mixed things going on in my head.
yeah. And do you feel maybe that the love and the bonding and everything was more like a heart felt, like
Yeah,
it, from within you, and the other stuff was from the head, and the heart was just overriding your thoughts? Is that maybe?
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And there was another thing that made it very difficult for me to look after the babies. I mean, I was functioning at a very low level, and my poor partner was doing everything. And
Mm,
I think, although she's a very, very kind person, was getting a bit sick of me kind of lying around doing nothing
mm,
a lot of the time and being a bit spaced out. And thinking that that was postnatal depression,
mm.
and she would get me to try and bath the babies every night, because she thought it was a good way for me to bond with the babies. And I was always very reluctant to bath the babies. And the reason was that I would have this very strong and intrusive thought to hold their heads under the water until they drowned. And it was such a compulsion to do that. And it was such a kind of fight
Mm,
because, I loved my two children, but this constant, it wasn't really an outside voice, but it was a very strong thought in my brain to hold their heads under the water until they were quiet. So I didn't want to bath them
mm.
because it was this ongoing battle every night. And
A-
then, but I
And
didn't want to tell my partner that I wanted to drown the babies because I was scared that she might take the babies away from
yeah.
me, want to leave me because I was such a monster. Um, I felt such shame and horror at thinking these things that I
Mm.
couldn't feel that I could tell anybody about them.
Yeah,
And
I can
yeah,
understand that. I can relate to that, and I think that there are definitely, even if you're not in the grips of a severe psychosis like yours, there are periods when mothers feel like you don't do it, but you do sort of think, like, if you don't stop screaming now, I just want to pick you up and throw you. And I
yeah.
can totally, I can relate to that. And I feel so sad for you that you felt you couldn't tell anyone, because I imagine if you had have said something to your partner, most likely she wouldn't have taken the babies away and left you, but gotten you some help.
Mm, mm, yeah.
Wow, that sounds
So
intense.
all this time, I was seeing a psychiatrist regularly, but I was only telling the psychiatrist about the postnatal depression symptoms. I didn't feel that I could tell her or anybody about the psychosis because, first of all, I couldn't tell them about the CIA stuff because
Mm,
I believed if I told anybody, the family would get killed.
mm,
And secondly, I couldn't tell them that I wanted to kill the babies because I was so ashamed of it. And I was terrified that I would get taken away from the family and the babies
mm,
would get taken away from me.
mm,
So I was treated with, gosh, I was treated with high dose amitriptyline, I was treated with lithium, I was treated with all sorts of tranquilizers. I mean, the poor psychiatrist was going through her every sort of tool in the box. And of course, nothing was working
mm.
because I wasn't telling her what was actually going on for me.
Because she was only treating your depression.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't until later on when I got some other delusions about a train coming at me and coming through the house and being terrified that the train would hit me. And that was something that I could tell her about
Yeah.
because it didn't have any kind of judgment value attached to it.
Yeah.
And I told her about that. And then she started giving me antipsychotics. And then suddenly, like magic, everything went away.
Wow.
And it was honestly just like a magic pill.
Really?
And I just became based in reality, and the CIA stuff all went away, and the wanting to kill the children went away
And
within days.
you obviously remember it because we're talking about it now. So what
Yeah.
happened when you sort of came back, you know, when the medication started taking effect and you realized that, you know, it was abnormal thinking?
Yeah.
How did you feel about that? Like, how did you sort of make sense of that in your mind? Or, you know, or did you just go, oh, well, that was crazy, I should have told someone? Or what were you thinking?
Yeah, it was just such a relief to have them go away.
Yeah.
And then I suddenly went, oh, that was an illness. I was psychotic.
Mm.
And then, oh, I really, really wish I had told someone about it, like
Yeah.
years ago. Like, I just wish I had told someone about it,
Yeah.
you know, instead of having all this suffering going on for
Yeah.
2 years.
So 2 years after you got the antipsychotics, it took 2 years for the train thing to happen and for you to
Yeah,
speak to.
yeah,
Wow,
yeah,
that's a long time.
yeah.
I've just forgotten what I was going to ask you. Sorry. That wow, I'm blown away by that. So if you could talk to your younger self, would you? I mean, it's such a tricky question. Would you tell her to put her hand up sooner? But you're in a state where you can't make that decision, I suppose, properly, you know. So I guess, yes, of course you would tell your younger self to put your hand up, but would you?
Yeah, it's so tricky. It's so tricky because that CIA delusion was such a tricky one, because
Yeah.
would you really put your family at risk? And I
Yeah.
did at one point decide that I would tell the psychiatrist. I had it all planned. I was going to get my daughter and my partner out of the room and tell the psychiatrist about the CIA thing. And then she had a mirror in her room. And then I decided, my heart absolutely sank, because I decided that the mirror was a one-way mirror and that the CIA was watching through the mirror.
Mm.
And I felt so sorry for her, because I thought, she doesn't know that she's being watched by the CIA. And I thought, should I tell her? And then I thought, well, if I tell her, they're going to know that I know, and then they're going to kill my family. And it was this great moral decision I had for me, because I thought, she's at danger too. I should tell her about it.
Mm.
But if I tell her, then my family dies. And I felt really bad, because I left the consultation without warning her about the CIA watching her. And I thought, well, I have to put my family before the psychiatrist,
Of
even though
course.
she's at risk now.
Of course. And how
And
how exhausting for you to constantly be managing this in your mind. I'm not surprised you were lying around at home. You're trying to save your family and keep, you know, keep everything in order, I suppose, in your mind.
yeah,
But obviously you had enough kind of thoughts about it not being really real, because you said, because you never did anything, like, other than, you know, not tell anyone. You didn't put the baby's heads underwater, or, you know, any
yeah,
of those things. So there was enough sort of, I suppose, mental clarity, if you want to call it that, for you to know not to do it.
yeah, yeah.
Wow, it's so interesting. So if someone is listening, it's again such a tricky question. If someone is listening who's experiencing similar delusions or hallucinations or feelings or voices or thoughts or something like that, and again, it's like a, you know, if you do this, I will kill your family or I will kill your baby. What would you have any advice of what you would tell somebody? Because obviously can't just say, oh, go put your hand up and, you know, because then you kill the family potentially. What would you say to someone if, you know, if you knew, if you somehow knew without them telling you, what would you say to them?
Well, I think if you could possibly find somebody that you trusted to let them know in some way, you know, even if you had to do it in some sneaky way, like
A note or
write
something?
a note and destroy the note or something, you know, I mean, it sounds a bit wonky to do that kind of thing, but, you know, in any way that you could just communicate that to some really trusted person.
Mm. Yeah, that's good advice. Would you do that now if you had your time again, do you think? Write a note to maybe the psychiatrist or a partner or something like
Well,
that?
I did. I mean, it sounds a bit wonky now, but I did think of slipping her a note and then eating the note so that the CIA could not
Then it's
see that
just
the note had
gone,
been written.
literally destroyed. Wow. Well, no, but
You know,
look, we're laughing, but I think when you're in the state, that's perfectly rational. It's like, well, you know, you try just, it's problem solving. There's a problem and you need to communicate a message, and then you have to get rid of the message somehow. It's actually a great idea
yeah,
to eat the note.
yeah.
Wow. So how are you these days now? It's been 26, sorry, how many years did you say? How old are your children? 23.
23.
23 years. And
Yeah,
how do you feel now? I mean, you said that the psychosis went away pretty much immediately
yeah.
and it didn't return.
Oh, I've had, um, I was pretty fine, and then when menopause struck, I got few little bouts of unusual thinking.
Mm-hmm. And did you
So
put your hand up straight away that time?
yeah.
Okay, good. Lesson learned. Oh, that's interesting. And
Yeah,
I guess again, you know, the hormonal upheaval within our bodies,
yeah.
like after childbirth and you're going through menopause. And do you feel, I mean, it's such, the whole thing is just, you know, from conceiving your children and not having this support and then finding out they're twins and people saying, oh, my condolences, to everything else, antenatal depression, postnatal depression, and postnatal psychosis. You must, I mean, you're an incredibly strong woman, incredible. What do you feel, what, how can I don't even know how to ask because I already know you're so amazing, but like, what has it brought out in you as a person, the struggle that you feel, you know, has made you a better person now?
Oh, I think it's made me a lot more tolerant of people who are a bit different, and also open to different ideas and perspectives, because I've kind of lived with having different ideas and different perspectives. I'm a bit more open to other people seeing things in different ways.
Mm.
And also, I think since then, I'm a lot less judgmental of other people, like more humble, I think. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Amazing. I'm blown away. I'm so grateful that you have shared your journey with us because, wow. Yeah. And, you know, you work as a GP now. Do you have women come into your practice where sometimes you think, you know, they could be on the verge of a psychosis, or do you find that there's a blurred line between postnatal depression and psychosis, or like
Yeah,
a big spectrum?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, one thing I do is, and I haven't had anybody say yes, but one thing that I would never volunteer myself, was that I was thinking of harming the children. And one thing when I'm talking to women who've got postnatal depression is that I tend to say, some people, when they're feeling like that, sometimes have feelings that they might like to, you know, harm their babies sometimes, and try and make it, not normalize it, but, just
More normal. Yeah.
more normal in that situation,
Yeah.
and actually ask that question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think that it's not something you're going to volunteer,
No.
but if somebody just sort of brings up the topic, then it's more likely that somebody might feel a little bit more comfortable about saying, look, I have feelings about that, because it's such a taboo,
Oh, I know. And it's so important to be spoken about. And I think I've spoken to a lot of mothers as well, and most volunteer stories that they probably wouldn't share with other people. And the majority, I think, have had at some point a moment where they think, I'm going to throw my baby off the balcony, or I'm going to put my baby's head under the bath, like in the bath or something. And it's not an ongoing thing like with you. It's generally the women that I've spoken to, it's a split thing. And then they go, you would never do it. And then you cry because, and I've had it myself. I've had it myself with my daughter, who had severe reflux, and I was so sleep deprived. And then as soon as I realized the thought that I was having, I just bawled my eyes out and I had to leave the room. I was,
Yeah.
And I think you're right. I think it's such a taboo. It's like, it's as if we feel that it labels us as a bad mother.
Yeah.
And that's the worst thing that you could possibly be, is a bad mother. How could you want to harm your child? So I think opening the conversation, and that's why I'm so grateful that you're speaking to us today, and so openly, and so with so much vulnerability, to hopefully encourage women to speak to someone else, their GP, or even just a friend or a mother, whoever you have a close relationship with, to say, I've been thinking this, or I had, it doesn't need to be an ongoing thing. Like I said, it could be just one thought. I think that I need some support, or I think that I need some help because yesterday I had a thought of, I want to drop my baby off a balcony, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
And so I'm so very grateful for you to share this with us, to just start opening these conversations, because motherhood is so challenging, and it can really just, take every little bit out of your reserves. And to think that there is a way that you should be or you should not be is crazy.
Oh, that's so true. We had our antenatal coffee group, and we met for about 5 years or 6 years, and everybody was saying how fantastic everything was going for everyone. And then finally, after my very challenging time, I told them a bit about the time that I'd been having. I mean, this was years later, and said, actually, I hadn't been having such a good time, and this is a bit about what's been going on for me. And then finally, pretty much everybody in the group said, oh no, actually I'd been having a difficult time, and I'd been having a difficult time. But everybody had been putting on this happy face and pretending that everything was wonderful at the antenatal coffee group. And surely that's not what it's all about. We should have been actually supporting each other through our difficult times, rather than just putting on this fake pretense that everything was going wonderfully. And
which is the whole idea of the group, isn't it? It's like they call the mothers group in Australia. You get put together with women that have got, or men as well, but people that have got children of a similar age, so that you can support each other through what's going on. And instead we're all like turning up with makeup going, oh no, I've had 8 hours sleep. And it's just So let's change that.
It just makes you feel worse if you're having a hard time.
Exactly. So I'm on a mission to change that. And the reason, I think I told you when we first met as well that this wasn't like, I didn't set out to be some sort of matrescence and motherhood expert. I come from a neuroscience background, but I just realized that when I was going through my tricky time, and I said tricky, it was bloody hard. It was not tricky. It was really hard. And I started talking to other women. That's when the conversation started. And so it's almost like we have to ourselves, and I'm saying this to, anyone, any mother that is listening, start a conversation as little or as big as you want, but know that it's until you speak, the conversation doesn't start. So nobody wants to be the first to say, I'm not doing so well, but someone has to be the first. So I challenge all of us to put our hand up and say, actually, you know what? Not doing so good right now, and I think that will make it the world of difference. I really do.
Yeah.
Liz, it's been an absolute honor. Thank you so, so, so much. I really appreciate your time. And oh God, I could just keep going. This is such an important topic and such important information for women to hear. And I hope that anyone who's listening who feels that they're struggling more than is manageable will put their hand up and reach out. And even if they write a note and then eat it, as long as they get some help. So thank you so much. Bye.
Pleasure. Okay. Bye, Jen.